Just on this idea about the Rwandan migrants, coming back to that again, because that's what reference was to the Archbishop of Canterbury. I mean, it is fair to say that it does seem that public opinion largely is on the side with the government on this in attempting to deal with it.
Well, I see one opinion poll published this morning that says that the government on a whole range of issues has negative ratings, and on their management of immigration, actually, their rating is minus 57%. So I'm afraid, Brian, I don't really share your confidence that the public are on the side of the government in this. The point of the fact is, though, that when it comes to this Rwanda scheme that Priti Patel has come up with, she is claiming that it will have a deterrent effect. Now, she confirmed to me yesterday in the House of Commons that the number of people who will be going to Rwanda, which is the capacity that Rwanda has to take, will be a few hundred a year, possibly a few thousand over a 5-year period. If you remember that there were 28,500 people who made the Channel crossing last year, it's difficult to see just where that deterrent effect is actually going to come from, even if this were a compassionate or a workable system, and we all know that it isn't.
What would the Liberal Democrats' solution be? I think we can all agree, can't we, clearly, that people shouldn't be putting their lives at risk crossing the Channel, that we do need to clamp down on these criminal gangs. What would you do instead?
We would set up safe and legal routes in regions where they were needed. We've shown in Afghanistan, we've shown in Ukraine that we can do this. I just don't understand why the government thinks that they should pick and choose the places where they will take refugees from in that place. We have international obligations to take refugees. We should be working with other people. We should be setting limits with other people in the number of people that we would take. We can do that if we set up safe and legal routes, and that is the way to stop the people traffickers. You know, in the same way that the Americans were able to end bootlegging of alcohol by ending prohibition, you will only ever end the people trafficking if you are able to end the illegality and to offer a legal route for people who need to come here.
But wouldn't you accept that lots of the people turning up at the Channel are not asylum seekers, they are economic migrants? And in the end, also...
Sorry, Dan, we've had this discussion. In fact, we had it last week, and you will recall that last week I told you, and nobody has ever contradicted me in this because it's government's figures, that 98% of those who make that Channel crossing go on to make applications for asylum, and that the overwhelming majority of these applications are then granted. Now, you know, I think people like yourself have to explain why it is that you continue to peddle misinformation about people who are coming here as genuine refugees. We have a system in place which will weed out anybody who's not a genuine refugee, but the overwhelming majority of people who make that crossing are.
But what would you say, though, to people who say, well, you know, frankly, under your scheme, the number of people applying for asylum would increase quite dramatically? And again, that's something the public just don't want. They don't want to see tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers arriving in Britain every year.
I would say listen to what we're saying, because in fact safe and legal routes would probably in fact lead to a reduction of the number of people who were coming, because you would have a safe and legal route and it would be a managed process. At the moment, you have seen the number of people going through the Channel route rise exponentially because everything that the government does simply fails. And it is the working definition of insanity that you keep trying the same thing time and time again and hoping for a different result. You're not going to get a different result. And you know, you saw earlier this week, or rather last week, when the Prime Minister announced the Rwanda scheme, that in fact he flatly contradicted Priti Patel, who had previously been saying that the Royal Navy and others would be pushing back these boats in the Channel. That was unworkable. This is unworkable. It's time for the government to stop chasing headlines here, and it's time for news outlets to stop peddling misinformation about refugees and get on to manage a way of giving help to those who need it most. That is how we've always done things in this country. That is the British way in the past, and I think it should still be the British way today.
OK, I mean, I'm just looking at a full fact thing here, which refers to the Refugee Council, who says that between January 2020 and June 2021, 61% of initial asylum decisions would have resulted in refugee protection. Clearly, there might be disagreement over the numbers, but you're right in saying that the majority
there would have been a substantial number more then granted in appeals, because the other problem with the system as it's currently administered by Priti Patel is that the standard of decision-making is exceptionally poor and it is exceptionally inefficient. It takes far too long to get decisions in the first place. If Priti Patel would give her efforts to getting the system right, then in fact I think you would find that there would be a lot more public confidence in it and you wouldn't need gimmicks of this sort.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.